Let's talk about the next 2D Metroid game, or Metroid Dread 2. What is happening here when it comes down to what Nintendo is planning to do, potentially with Mercury Steam, when it comes to the next epic 2D Metroid game. Shoutouts to Reese Kiwi Talks Riley. He had a little bit of an update on this, and I wanted to give my take on what Nintendo is going to do for the next 2D Metroid game, because believe it or not, it's coming up on the 5-year anniversary of Metroid Dread. That game released back in October of 2021, and it was a pretty big release for the Metroid franchise. So we're going to go over all of the details and everything you need to know about what's happening next with the next big 2D Metroid game. But before we get into that, please make sure you hit that like button, subscribe if you are someone new, because we are giving away a Nintendo Switch 2. All you got to do to enter is subscribe to the channel, drop a comment below on what your favorite Metroid game is, and once we hit 150,000 subscribers, we will give that away. Plus, we've got a $50 eShop card that we're giving away at the end of this month. So hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, click that notification bell. Let's go ahead and jump right into the content here. Shout outs to Reese once again on Twitter. He was talking about how he's not really excited for anything that Nintendo's announced so far, but he's really only a Mario, Zelda, and Metroid fan, so he doesn't really like too much outside of those franchises, and I think Smash Brothers as well. But somebody talked to him about potentially having the next Mercury Steam 2D Metroid game being revealed this year, and he had this to say. Once again, he does do interviews with developers. He's got inside information before, so he's definitely someone that doesn't just talk when he doesn't know the information about it. So he said this in response to that about 2D Metroid game being revealed this year. Don't think so. I think that's a 2027 release. The next 2D Metroid is very, very important because it's the end of an era due to something substantial happening with that game, and the fans will be divided on whether it's a good or bad thing. So immediately, what everyone always jumps to with the good or bad thing, before we get into some of the other stuff, immediately people jump into, okay, well, Samus dies, right? I think that's probably the first thing that people are thinking about if there's something that's divided when it comes to what's happening with this game. But it could also be other things. A major villain dies. They introduce maybe a new character or new something. Like, there could be anything when it comes to that. So I'm not going to speculate too much on that, especially when it comes to Metroid fans. People are absolutely insane with this franchise, so we'll wait till we get there, because Metroid Prime 4 was a lot when it comes to what they should or shouldn't do, or characters or talking or not, and all sorts of stuff. So I don't want to start that up right now at this point. Let's just wait for Metroid Dread 2 or the next 2D Metroid, Metroid 6, whatever you want to call it, to come out, and then we can kind of discuss that. Now, why is this a big deal overall when it comes to Metroid? Well, Metroid Dread, easily one of the best Nintendo Switch 1 games. I love this game back in 2021. It released in such a hyped state because we got the Nintendo Switch OLED, which was a nice improvement over the base Nintendo Switch. With the OLED screen, you had the better quality speakers, you had more memory. It was just a better build overall. Just a better build, felt better in the hands. Everything was just more sleek and better with that Nintendo Switch OLED. And Metroid Dread kind of launched with it as a pseudo launch title because it was white with the Joy-Cons, and of course Metroid Dread with Samus and her suit had the white as well, so it kind of looked like a special edition Switch when it wasn't really a special edition Switch. But I think it helped propel not only the Switch OLED but also Metroid Dread. Metroid Dread also set a franchise record when it comes to 3 million plus sales in that first year. That was huge overall. No other Metroid game had sold that fast or that well. So that was also just another massive thing and a big step when it comes to people playing and getting into the character of Samus more and the Metroid franchise. Now, Metroid Dread was also Action Game of the Year at the TGAs that year in 2021. Plus, it was nominated for Game of the Year. I think it won a couple here or there, but it was nominated, and it was one of the highest rated games of the year as well, with an 88 overall average. So it got a lot of publicity. A lot of people liked talking about the game, discussed it, what it did, how well it reviewed, all of that good stuff. So it was definitely nice to see, after 2D Metroid being essentially absent for so long. Metroid Dread had been rumored for so long. So to see it launch in that type of state with those sales and those reviews and those awards, it was just a nice feel-good story of 2021. Now, another thing that I thought that the game was really good, and I think that it's going to kind of bleed into what they're doing here, is that Metroid Dread was really innovative for 2D Metroid games, and just for Metroid games in general. It had a really cool Emmy mechanic with those robots that chase you, but have different, I would say, tendencies based on where you were and what you did. And you had all these different powers that can kind of help to trip them up or get away from them. So it was a pretty cool, and I would say innovative mechanic for the Metroid franchise overall. And it all ran at a rock solid 60 FPS. So that was super nice when we saw games like that. Now, they introduced also one of the greatest villains and plot twists of all time for a Nintendo franchise. No spoilers here, even though it's been, 4 years, 5 years plus now at this point. No spoilers, but I highly recommend, if you want to get into Metroid, especially 2D Metroid games, start with Metroid Dread. It's a game that is not maybe as easy to play as Super Metroid or some of the other ones, which you can get into those ones if you want to. But if you want to play an HD 2D Metroid game, which there's only one at this point when it comes to Metroid Dread, this is the place to start. And it's just so nice and it runs so well. And that ending plus the plot twist is incredible. Now, I will admit that you do kind of have to be a Metroid fan to truly understand it, but it might be the thing that springboards you, if you're not a Metroid fan, springboards you into getting into it. And if you've played some of the other games and maybe aren't caught up on the lore, man, it really makes things a lot better. So I really like that. So that's why there's big, I would say, anticipation, and there would be like a lot of, I would say, pressure, or there'd be a lot of expectations for this next one, especially considering how good Metroid Dread was on the Nintendo Switch 1. In addition to that, let's just talk about everything else. The attention to detail, the great locations, the good free content updates, the boss battles, those were all great. So the game was just so well done. So heading into this next game, there's a couple different things that I would like to see when it comes to what Nintendo does and what we could see from this. One, I think the first thing is if you can launch it with new hardware in some type of way. And I mean like a new model, a new bundle, new something like that. Definitely do that. I think that was a winning recipe when it comes to Metroid Dread. Launching it with the Nintendo Switch OLED, that was awesome. Nintendo usually takes about 2 years before they get something else in. So I know with the Nintendo Switch 1, it took them about 2 years. And I think it was 2019, we got the Nintendo Switch Lite. So if there's going to be a Nintendo Switch 2 Lite, I think that if you can launch it with a Metroid Dread to help things out and kind of scheme it or color scheme it that type of way, that would be great. Now, they might have other ideas, or they might have a different franchise that they want to launch with that Nintendo Switch 2 Lite if they're doing it, or Nintendo Switch 2 OLED, or whatever they're going to do. I doubt they'd be able to get an OLED out already at this point, considering prices for everything. But I do think that if you have something else to do, this would be the time to get it with that, just so you can have kind of the same impact, or at least try to have some of the same impact that maybe you had back in 2021. Now, another thing that I'd like to see overall is definitely keep it up in terms of the free content and stuff. I think that they did a great job with how they positioned the game and what it had, but then also some of the updates helped kind of keep the hype alive with this. So if they can do that from the beginning, already have that content put in there, or say, hey, look, we're going to add some cool stuff afterwards, like the Dread mode that was in there and some of the other free updates, I think that really does help kind of extend the life a little bit, get more people to maybe try it out overall. And I think that when it comes to the Switch 2 system itself, take full advantage of that, man. I think that having the Nintendo Switch 2, now you have a 120 FPS system. You have a system that is significantly stronger than the Nintendo Switch 1. You can do so many cool things with a fully rendered 3D game, but running on a 2D plane. Metroid Dread looked awesome, but you can clearly see, okay, they're definitely sacrificing some resolution, sacrificing some extra detail, some textures here and there because the Nintendo Switch 1, but with the Nintendo Switch 2, you can have it running fully overall and really take that world and that life and kind of put it together and make it look more beautiful than ever. So I really hope that they take their time to intricately design the worlds, the art, the atmosphere, and everything with the next Metroid game. I think all those are really important and an awesome type of thing to add to the experience. But I think overall, when you're looking at it, gameplay is king. One of the things that Metroid Dread did so perfect was that it nailed the controls and the gameplay. That has to be a must, if not even better. Having the counter, having the camouflage, or like the camo type of thing, having the different seeker missiles, having all the different abilities weapons, new suits, powers, and things that Samus has. That's always one of the best things about Metroid games. And if you have a variety of good things, but a gimmick that could tie it in there, and somehow if they can get a gimmick that's even better than the Emmy gimmick, which I think that they can, because that gimmick, while it's awesome, it definitely frustrated so many people, but people bought it anyway. But with the Nintendo Switch 2 having a higher quality system, being able to do more things with that, they can even take that and take it a step further, because one of the reasons why it took so long to get Metroid Dread, despite being rumored all the way back like in the GBA or DS days or something like that, yeah, I think like the DS days, was because they didn't have the horsepower with the DS to really do the ideas that Sakamoto wanted to do. But now with the Nintendo Switch 2, maybe for third-party developers it's a little bit harder because they're working from more powerful systems if they're trying to port things, but they're getting work done. But with Nintendo, when it comes to their first-party development, this is almost like limitless power. This is like over 9,000. This is definitely the Vegeta here when it comes down to it. With that, they can create new cool gameplay ideas and different things for the Metroid franchise. So that's going to be super exciting to see if they can get that done in a way that captures people's attention like they did with Metroid Dread. And another thing that obviously would be great to see if they can get this one done is the music. I think that the music, that is my only like one, I would say, negative, if there was something, or not even really like a super negative, but just nothing that really stood out too much when it comes to it, outside of like the main theme renditions and some of the stuff that they had before. But Metroid has always been known to have bangers. They were kind of like a bit, you know, moody and atmospheric because of the type of game that Metroid was, but it was known for having bangers when it comes to 2D Metroid games, especially Super Metroid. This one with Metroid Dread, not so much. So I want them to really go into their bag, find someone, find the people, do what you need to do to make sure that you have that sauce, that spice, that seasoning, that flavor that made Super Metroid and Metroid Fusion and some of the other tracks' music so good and memorable. We need some of that sauce here, because it definitely felt like a little bit like unseasoned chicken when it comes to Metroid Dread. Not that it was bad. Unseasoned chicken can taste okay. If it's cooked right, it's got the right juices and all that, it can be okay, but you still want to have that seasoned up a little bit. So I think that's the only situation that I would say, like, hey, this was not done to the best that I would want to see it be done. So I'm hoping that with this next one, they do that. Now, if they add all of those points that I talked about, they nail the gameplay, they nail the vibes, they nail the story, they nail the details, they nail the environment, everything like that. With a system like the Switch 2, we're looking at a 90+ game. We're looking at a game of the year contender. We're looking at a game that's going to get a bit more respect and a bit more, I would say, nods from people out there overall in terms of what it can do, because I think that's just a little bit of the missing piece when it comes to some of the music, when it comes to what it does. Now, I'll say this, guys, I still don't understand how Metroid Dread got underneath a 90 Metacritic. In my opinion, the lowest that game should get is like a 91 or 92. Now, I get it, not everybody likes that style, or maybe everyone didn't feel it was as good as I thought it was, or maybe they got frustrated with the Emmys and how those work and like the 1/2 hit kills or whatever, right? I get that. Some people don't like that style of game, but to me, if you're looking at it objectively in terms of what that game does from a 2D Metroid game perspective, man, it was near perfection with really just a few things when it comes to some of the design and when it comes to the music that I had an issue with. But that game plays like butter. So with the Nintendo Switch 2, with this Metroid Dread 2, or the next new big 2D Metroid game, there's a lot to prove. There's a lot on the line. It's interesting what Mr. Reese Kiwi Talks has to say here, that people are going to be divided about the game. I mean, the last thing that I want is a Metroid Prime 4 style of controversy with that type of stuff, but I doubt it'll be like that. Although, once again, it could be something crazy. It could be something that completely, I would say, splits people, draws the line in the sand. But I don't think it's going to be that big of a deal once we actually get there and once they explain everything and kind of show it off. Because he says that some people will really like it, some people won't. So I'm guessing it's some type of story beat with what Samus does or what happens to her or something that could happen or introducing somebody else or something along the lines of that kind of ruffles some feathers when it comes to Metroid. Because really, if you change anything with Metroid, it ruffles feathers. I mean, you can have Samus in a new hairstyle, people are going to start talking about how they're going to subtract a point or two just because of that. It can have like no effect on gameplay, and people are like, oh my gosh, it's the worst thing ever. Some people, at least. So there's definitely going to be always somebody saying something, and that's fine. People are allowed to have their opinions and all of that. But I'm just excited for the next 2D Metroid game because I think it's going to be really good. I like 2D Metroid more than I like 3D Metroid Prime and all that, but Metroid Dread, that's like my favorite Metroid game, along with Super Metroid. Metroid Dread, Super Metroid, I like Metroid Fusion. I do like Metroid Zero Mission Remake, but still, yeah, those are all great games, but this has the potential to be the best one if they can get it right with a system like the Nintendo Switch 2, with a capable development team like Mercury Steam, what Mr. Sakamoto can help out, and everybody at Nintendo. Look out for this one, guys. Does seem like maybe a 2027 announcement and drop. It's been too long, so that will be the 6-year anniversary of Metroid Dread next year if this game comes out next year at that point. So 6 years from the last one, that seems just about right for a new 2D Metroid game. So what do you guys think when it comes to everything that we talked about here with Metroid Dread and with the potential sequel, and what is happening here with the next big 2D Metroid game, potentially a big controversial thing that will split fans? Let me know in the comment section below. All right, guys, that wraps it up for this video here. Thank you so much for watching. I do appreciate it. Please make sure you hit that like button, subscribe if you're someone new, click that notification bell, and check out my other Nintendo Switch 2 RPG content and more right here on screen. Thanks for watching, and we'll catch you guys for the next one. Peace.